Hey everyone, it's Dr. Jeff LaCure. Welcome to another episode of the Wake Up Call, your wake up call. The weather today, I think everyone needs a little bit of a wake up call. Today's August 7th. I can't believe we're already into August. It goes by way too fast. Again, as I talk about all the time, you got to appreciate and value every single day. Don't give them away. Interesting topic for you today. I've had actually quite a few requests for it. It just seems like the stars and moons have aligned that I bring this to you today, and it's about counseling, quite frankly. And what I hope you'll take away today is the importance and value of counseling, the importance and value of outstanding mental health. Everything is derived off our mental health. Our physical health is directly impacted by our mental health. And I want to help you identify a really skilled counselor. And I'm so pleased, actually. I almost said proud, but you know how I am about that word. I'm so pleased to be part of this profession. I've been a shrink now for 35, more than that years now. Where the heck does the time go? And I specialize in working with couples. I do a lot of work with teenagers. And I continue to specialize, one of the few people actually in the country who specialize in working with adoptees and adoptive families. And what I want you to understand is that there is, as with any profession, there's some really skilled people in my field, and there's a whole lot who are not. And I mean that sincerely. And I want to help you distinguish, give you some warning signs, symptoms of somebody who has a clue in my field and somebody that you probably want to take a hard pass. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I've been really privileged over the years to teach at the graduate school level for students who are earning their master's degree or their doctorate degree. And they want to do the kind of work that I do. And one of the cool things I get to do is encourage people to really learn and grow in their journey to becoming a shrink. And I also get to really let people know, I don't think this field is for you. And I want you to hear that again. I do encourage sometimes my students, I just don't think this field is for you. This field isn't for everyone, and this is a highly, highly, highly skilled profession. I remember years ago my now ex-girlfriend, that's not why she's my ex-girlfriend, but she said to me one day at dinner, I can't believe you get paid to talk to people. I can't believe you get paid to listen to people. And on one hand, she's right. I do listen, and on the other hand, I do talk with people. But that's not what counseling is about. Not what counseling is about at all. It's not just the classical nonsense we see on TV. Counseling is a wonderfully deep experience. And here's tip number one. You have to be ready for it. You have to be ready for it, or it's not going to be effective. And so I was able to share with my ex-girlfriend that counseling is this remarkable conversation that happens between two people who are ready to be in the room at the same time. It involves an incredible amount of trust, right? Trust. To in some ways tell a perfect stranger a lot about your world and your goals and what's there and what's missing. And the number one, I'll tell you, the number one most therapeutic factor, according to all the research studies, and there's been a lot of research studies that have determined why is counseling actually really, really effective. Again, for people who are ready to embark on this journey. And the number one factor that makes counseling really effective for people who are ready to embark on the journey is that they felt cared for. They felt cared about. And there is something very healing in sitting in a room with somebody you know because of trust and ongoing trust, that they truly care about your best interest. They truly care about what happens to you. They truly care about what happens when you're not in the office. They truly care what happens when you decide to no longer continue the journey of counseling. And so keep that in mind, that the number one most important factor determined by people who have been in a counseling relationship is they felt that their counselor cared. Now, you will hear me constantly use the word counselor. Sometimes I use shrink in some interesting way. Shrink has been given a bad name. I actually find the humor in it. You will never hear me use the word therapist. God, professionally, I can't stand the word. See, therapist doesn't define what we do. And just so you know, in the state of Massachusetts, in order for someone to be a counselor, you have to be licensed. To call yourself a social worker, you have to be licensed. In order to call yourself a psychologist, you have to be licensed. In order to call yourself a psychiatrist, you have to be licensed. To call yourself, here's one of my least favorite words in America, a psychotherapist, you don't need a license. You don't need any credentials at all. You literally could have your GED in high school and say, you know what? I got a few free hours a week. I'm going to do psychotherapy, and I'm going to call myself, I'll make up a name, William Smith, psychotherapist. There is no licensure. There are no credentials in the state of Massachusetts to call yourself a psychotherapist. And therefore, I will never refer to myself as a psychotherapist because I'm not. I'm licensed, I'm credentialed, I have my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and my doctorate degree. And I earned all three of them. And I earned my licensure. And I earned my credentials. And I hope I've earned the respect in my industry. So keep that in mind when you are seeking out somebody for guidance. I will also say that I'm a big fan of having your friends or family members who have worked with a counselor refer you to a counselor. I think it's really, really helpful. I would say the majority of my clinical practice over the last 35 years hasn't been advertising. It hasn't been any of the traditional outlets that you might assume. I'm not doing television commercials, although I guess this could be seen as a glorified infomercial. Wink, wink. No, it's referrals from people who are currently or previously worked with me in a counseling relationship, and I think that says quite a bit about some of the work that I do. And I will tell you flat out, and I'm not going to talk a lot about me, but I have a very unique approach because I respect who I work with. And my philosophy is, and you can't see it, it's off camera, but I'm looking at the door to the studio. And if this were my office, and in some ways it is interestingly alike because sitting across from me is the love seat. So here I sit, right, and there's our love seat, and right there's the door. See, when my clients walk through the door, I remind them how strong they actually are. And I want to repeat that for you. You're not weak because you seek out a counselor. You're not weak because you seek out mental health services. You're weak if you don't. How's that for a little mind bender? You're weak if you don't. See, and as I look at the door across the studio, see, when my clients walk in, already I know something about them. They're probably ready to embark on this journey, which makes it highly successful. And they are mentally and emotionally stronger than everyone who drives by my office. And see, people do this all the time. They drive by a shrink's office like this. Oh, I don't need it. I'll work out my own things all by myself. I don't know where that voice came from. No one talks like that. But you hear that, right? I'm going to work it out by myself. When you come to a counselor, you're working it out by yourself. You really are. In the same way you go to an auto mechanic to help you with your car, to tune up the car, go see a counselor and get a tune-up. That's you. You're driving it, right? The counselor's riding shotgun with you, but it's your counseling experience. You're driving it. And remember, it takes strength to walk through the door. It takes weakness to stay outside of it. So really look at, I hope you change your perspective on how you view counseling because it's such a wonderfully cool experience and it will make the strong even stronger. It will make the courageous even more brave. It does wonderful things for how you think and how you view. And I really believe it keeps small problems small, helps people manage their anxiety, helps people manage their depression. And I want to share with you excuse me, one of my sort of evolutions as a shrink. During the tail end of the pandemic, a reporter asked me if I was seeing any uptick in people's difficulties around their mental health, and I said, "Oh my God, yes." I mean, not like a little uptick, like a massive uptick, because we were not designed as human beings to be locked in our homes, to wear a mask when we go out publicly, and to be frightened about going out publicly. And shame, I'm going to say it right on camera, and shame on the government at the state, local, and national and federal level for trying to shame people and not spending time with their families around Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then wondering why we have a mental health crisis going on right now. We're still feeling it. You could feel the rage build up and bubble inside of me. Back to the story. So she asked if I had noticed a difference, and I said absolutely. And again, as I had mentioned, we're not wired to isolate. We're not wired not to be social. We're social creatures. We're social beings, and we need to connect with people. And when you wear a damn mask, you are losing 65% of all communication, because 65% of all communication is nonverbal. So people were able to say the words, but you couldn't see the majority of their face. She also asked, and this is the punchline, has my approach to mental health changed? And it has. And if you only take one thing away from our time together today, take this with you. See, I used to believe my role was to help people change. Now I realize my role is to help people accept. In some ways, it's like step one of the AA model. Give me the power, and I'm paraphrasing it, to accept the things that I can't change. And there are certain things in our life that we can't necessarily change, but when we accept them, when we accept our vulnerabilities, when we accept maybe some of the lousy cards we were dealt, guess what it does? It changes how we view them. So by default, we change. See, I don't encourage people to come to counseling to change. I encourage people to come to counseling to accept. To accept the vulnerabilities, to accept the strength. See, I'll tell you, 35 years, let me tell you a couple of things. I've never worked with anyone who was broken. Yet I'll tell you, before they started seeing me, a lot of people did feel broken. And I get to highlight for them how just really healthy they are. And I love when I can share with clients. When I say to them, can I share an observation with you? And they go, sure. And I go, you're a lot more healthy emotionally than you give yourself credit for. See, that's the beauty and the magic of what happens in the counseling relationship. I focus on people's health, on what they do well, on their strengths. See, we have a society that is victimized, is victimhood. Poor me. Counseling is about uplifting the spirit. At times, my graduate students have said, Dr. LaCure, because that's my name, you're like a Southern Baptist preacher in class. I feel motivated and inspired. See, that's what counseling's about. Go to a Southern Baptist church service and you walk out. You've sung or sang, I don't know, grammar's not my thing, even though I've written 9 books. You've done a lot of singing. There's a powerful preacher there. You're talking about having your spirit uplifted. That's what counseling's about. Counseling's about you taking charge of your own life. Counseling's about detoxifying yourself from all the unhealthy relationships. Counseling is about learning that you deserve to be happy, that you deserve to have success in your life, that maybe some of the things that have happened to you in your life you did not deserve. And maybe most importantly, you did not cause. See, one of the things I try to do in counseling is help people forgive. Forgive those who may have hurt them, and maybe even the most difficult person to forgive, ourselves. See, counseling is wonderful. Counseling is honest. Counseling isn't about listening and talking. Counseling is about doing and experiencing and commitment to excellence. If this is your counselor, run. If this example is your counselor, run. if they have a yellow legal pad sitting on their lap and everything you say, they're doing this. And look what happened to my eyes. See, my eyes have now focused on the sheet, which means my ears are focusing on the sheet as well. See, and if you're the client and you have a counselor, and I use that term loosely because you do not use a legal pad and write stuff down as your clients are talking about their emotions and their experiences. You don't do that. That's not counseling. It's like an interview. I don't understand it, but it's not mental health, and it's not good for our mental health. But if they do that, you know what's really normal? For the client to say to themselves, what are they writing down? And why are they writing it down? And where does it go once they've written it down? So I tell you, if they do that, they're not skilled, they don't have a great memory, and they don't know how to focus on you. And it's intensely focused on you. If they ever say this to you, classical TV shrink them. You tell them something about any experience, and they go, how did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? No. That's TV shrinkdom. That's what we see on Netflix, not a sponsor. How did that make you feel? And the other thing you should look out for, because if you start hearing this a lot, run. When they ask you why. See, mental health, a good mental health, isn't about why. It's about how. See, when someone asks you a question of why, you almost feel like you have to justify it. No, you don't. You don't have to justify your emotions. If you're angry, you're angry. Why were you angry? Never. Come to me. I'll never ask you why. And if I have to ask why about something, I will share it in advance and tell you that I don't ask why very often. Good mental health professionals are naturally warm. They have an excellent sense of humor, and they don't take themselves too seriously, although they take what you say and your world and your experience really, really seriously. Let me tell you about a time when I was married back in the day, and we tried, notice what I'm saying, we tried couples counseling. Well, the very first couples counselor, that's right, there was more than one. The very first couples counselor we tried spent the entire time, I kid you not, talking about dogs and about how dogs sort of love unconditionally and all this other stuff. And I guess his style worked because me and my wife at the time, we came out of the session laughing at the absurdity and had dinner together, and it kind of relaunched us for a couple of weeks. Needless to say, we didn't go back and see that dude, man. That dude should have been a vet. Then we went to see somebody else because, you know, I guess I have to be able to ascribe and subscribe to the service, and we certainly were breaking down in our communication. So we went to counselor number 2. And counselor number 2 cried quite a bit during our sessions with, this is so sad, this is so emotional. I wanted to give her my card and say, get your shit together. You're on the wrong side of the couch. Come to my office, we'll get you squared away. And then the list goes on and on. So I'll tell you flat out, it is not necessarily easy to find somebody who has a clue. And some of the hardest people to find in mental health are really good couples counselor. And get you ready for the big shocker? My clinical specialty. How shocked are you to hear that I would say it is incredibly hard to find a great couples counselor, and here I am saying I'm a great couples counselor. But it is really, really hard to find an excellent couples counselor because it's probably the most difficult kind of counseling you can do, because there's this middle ground of supporting both people and also being a straight shooter. And by the time a couple comes to my office, they're already in crisis. See, no couple in my 35 years have ever knocked on my door and said, hey, Jeff, can we have an appointment with you because our relationship's amazing and we just want to pay big bucks and tell somebody how amazing our relationship is. See, by the time people reach me, particularly for marital or relationship counseling, they're really in trouble. So take that tip. And if your relationship is getting a little funky, if the communication's breaking down, if you're starting to feel resentment, if you're starting to feel taken for granted, you've got to reach out to somebody. I'm telling you, get ready and reach out, because in all likelihood, your relationship is worth saving. And if you have children, there's a lot of other people who are counting on you to get it together. I want to wrap it up. I wanted to keep this one intentionally brief, just to give you a kind of a few tips. So let me just summarize things that you should know, and things you should look for, and things that you should run. Tip number one, although not necessarily in order: yellow legal pad. I wouldn't spend 10 minutes with that person. I just wouldn't. There is no need to write down anything about what you're saying, past or present. There's no reason to do it. No reason at all. And to me, that is the behavior of the most unskilled, lack of ability counselor. I don't even call them a counselor. I'm going to call them an interviewer, because that's really what they're doing. There's no need to write down what you said and what was going on and all that other kind of stuff. It's just not helpful. To be honest with you, I don't think it matters what graduate school they attended, what they graduated, what degree they graduated with. It really depends on the there are people, and I'll say like me, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but I am going to be honest with you. There are people that were born into this profession. I don't know if I even chose this profession, but one thing I'm clear of is this profession chose me. I think I get a lot of my gifts from my mom. She and I had a lot of wonderful talks all through childhood and adolescent and college, and I just knew. This profession chose me. Hasn't been a day I've regretted it. So again, there's a little tip there, right? You want somebody who loves what they do. See, I have never worked a day in my life when I'm in my office, right? It's not hard work. It's amazing. It's enjoyable. It is mind-blowing in a way, how powerful the counseling experience can be. And I'll tell you, I feel nothing but privileged to have people come to see me, trust me enough to share things that make them feel great, and share things that maybe makes them not feel so great. And I don't ever take that for granted. Another thing that you want to find in a really good shrink is they leave judgment outside in the waiting room. They leave judgment. I'll tell you, I'm really judgmental. Ask my fiance. I'm a judge. I'm proudly judgmental. Really judgmental. I see certain things and I'm like, wrong, but I'm not judgmental in the counseling experience. And I mean that sincerely. I am not judgmental of the people that I'm privileged to work with, because judgment in there doesn't work. And quite frankly, a lot of people come to counseling because they're sick of being judged outside of the counseling experience. Again, please take this to heart. It is not a sign of weakness or vulnerability for you to seek out counseling. As a matter of fact, see it. I mean it sincerely. I'm not spinning it. I'm not giving you a cup full of BS. I'm telling you straight truth. It is a sign of strength, right? You should be like really pumped that you talk with someone. And if you have found somebody that you have a great connection with, you got to send people to that person. Because there's just a lot of people in my field. It's not that their heart's not in the right place. It's not that they're not well trained. They're just not good at it. Counseling is an art form. I want you to work with artists. I want you to work with Da Vinci. I want you to work with Maya Angelou. I want you to work with Mozart, right? It's an art form, right? And not everyone in my in my field, I should say, look, I'm thinking of movies already, are artists. They don't understand the subtle nuances. And a lot of people in my field are attracted to this field because they're control freaks. And they see, almost intuitively, ooh, I'm the counselor, I'm the big dog, so I'm in control. It is a very equal relationship. As a matter of fact, even though I'm a doctor, love that term, right? My clients call me Jeff. And if you've noticed, I've referred to my clients as my clients. See, if anybody refers to you as a patient, you should leave immediately. You're not sick. You're not a patient. I love that. I love when I go to conferences. And the only reason I go to conferences is so I can speak at them. And then I always have some yo-yo named Barbara, but you can call me Deb. Yep, that actually happened. My name is Barbara, but you can call me Deb. Right then I knew something was up. And she wanted a brief case consultation where she wanted to talk about her patients. I go, I don't do that. She goes, oh, you don't do case consultation? I go, no, I don't refer to people who are privileged to work with as patients. They're not sick. We're here to uplift and empower, not make them feel disempowered and they're a patient. They're not a patient. Quick side note, mandatory counseling doesn't work. Doesn't work. You have to be ready. So parents, as much as I love working with your teenagers, and I do, and I've developed really incredible relationships with teenagers over the years because I think emotionally and intellectually. I stopped growing at around 16. I say that wink, wink. But I'm just a big teenager or a small adult. I don't know what it is, but I'm somewhere in between. You note my sense of humor. You can't force them. You just can't force them because you think it's a great idea. So you know what I suggest parents do if their teenagers are fighting it? You come in as parents and we'll give you parenting strategies. You know what? After doing this, and we're going to wrap now, I realize it's time for part 2 of this podcast. So I promise I'll bring in, I'll do a part 2 of this podcast. But I want to close it with this. Counseling is awesome. Counseling is amazing. There are some really skilled people out there. Make sure you see really skilled people out there who understand the magnificence and the power and the grace of their role and the magnificent and the grace and the power and influence that you have within inside of you. And understand that when you walk through a counselor's door, kick it down because you're telling that counselor, I mean business, I'm ready, and I'm strong. I do seek a little bit of guidance to help me get to that next level of real true self-care, self-worth, and maybe most importantly, self-peace. This is Jeff LaCure. I'm dropping the doctor for today. This is Jeff LaCure. And guess what? This has been your wake-up call. I'll see you next week.